nonsense.
I mean, he's basically irresistible to people for the same reason he can pretty much only work at a carnival. He has nothing to prove or disprove about himself or to himself. He has no shame.
Here's your host, Brian Kaufman.
Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. I'm so glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you're doing your listening through the new and improved Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming away over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts on them. The phone and the text line are the same number for your convenience, 719-247-1313. Brent Bergman is going to stop by next hour, as we have much to discuss in the world of college football from an Air Force perspective. And actually, that's where I'd like to start. Because, you know, a bye week kind of gives you a chance to take a breath, kind of survey the landscape, ponder what has gone on, and then ponder what is ahead. And I've done a fair amount of that over this Air Force bye week. And while there are some real issues with this football team, especially on the offensive side that I'll get into momentarily, that need to be ironed out for any good outcome to this season to be possible, you look at these first three games, and I think it's the San Jose State one that kind of sticks with people. Merrimack wasn't great, right? And Baylor, you wanted Air Force to be more competitive than they were in that second half. But the San Jose State one is kind of, I think, where people may have gotten a little bit down on this football team. And it's because I think in many ways, Air Force is not used to losing that early in the season and used to losing that early in the conference season to a team in San Jose State that you would not necessarily, although they've had some decent years under Brennan before he went to Arizona, you don't think of them as a football power by any stretch of the imagination. But San Jose State's 3-1. San Jose State went to Pullman and took Washington State to double overtime. They put up 52 points in that game. For their offense, and Nick Nash, who has been one of the better group of five players this year in the country, the 17 they put up against Air Force was an off day. It was a bad day for their offense, which is a credit to Air Force's defense, which is still intact. You saw what Baylor was able to move the ball against Colorado. So Baylor's offense is pretty good. San Jose State's offense is very good. And I think you can look at the 1-2 start and understand that all isn't necessarily lost with this football team. It's not a good start. You may need to, the idea that this team is going to keep up with what it's been over the last few years is probably out the window. But you could argue that was the case to begin the year. the idea that Air Force was going to win 9 or 10 games. But for this realization to lead to something, they have to win tomorrow. If they win tomorrow against Wyoming, and obviously if they win, then they figured out some of their issues offensively. I don't think they'll beat Wyoming 3-0. Somebody please clip that and play it back if Air Force wins 3-0 tomorrow. But I think if they're going to beat Wyoming, then they'll look better offensively than maybe they have, than definitely they have in the first 3 games of the season. And for those of you who have been following along with Air Force football for a while, you know that Laramie has not been kind to Air Force. The football team that's there or the town, to be quite honest. I believe it was 2012 the last time Air Force won a game in Laramie, and there are a lot of reasons that can go into it, but I witnessed it firsthand. Goofy stuff happens. I watched a game that Air Force was getting ready to win, and it just went out the window in Laramie. So, and I know the Cowboys are down this year, and I think that's should actually add to your belief that Air Force can right the ship a little bit tomorrow. They are 3.5-point favorites last time I checked on the road. But there is something to be said for going into a stadium that your program has not had a lot of success. And I know it's different players, but some of that gets around. Right? More than a few of the players on Air Force understand what Laramie has been for this football program. So you get a win against Wyoming on the road, and now you feel infinitely better about things going into Navy Week. 1-3, struggling against Wyoming. I think you would be right to be quite worried about Air Force's chances of winning the CIC trophy. To say nothing of Army down the road. Did you see Army against Temple last night? Army's really good. So, but that's the second service academy. Cross that bridge when you come to it. And it's more than a few weeks away. But you beat Wyoming. You figure out some of these things offensively. You feel better about things going into Navy. You get Navy at home. That'll be the best crowd, best atmosphere that will be at Falcon Stadium all season. And if you can ride that wave, get a win against Navy, all of a sudden, look at where you're at. You're above 500. You're 3-2. You're halfway to bowl eligibility. I think Saturday is vital. Absolutely vital to Air Force's season. Now, what do they need to get fixed? They need better play out of the quarterback position. I was mildly surprised that John Boucher was listed as the unequivocated starter at the quarterback position on the weekly depth chart. I figured I'd at least see an or. Did not see that. So it would appear that Troy Calhoun still believes that his best chance to win is with John Boucher. And the number one thing with him, and it's what got other quarterbacks onto the field last time out for Air Force. Ball security. It's one thing if he's not in sync with his receivers, making good passes. It's one thing if he's not running the ball effectively. It is the mortal sin of the Air Force offense, as well as many other offenses, but especially with the way that Air Force wins games, right? Controlling the ball, milking the clock, shortening the game. That's how Air Force does it. And if you cough up the football, give the opposing team good field position, give them extra opportunities to score against you, as good as the Air Force defense is, that will put your job security at risk. So I don't know how long the leash is, but clearly Troy Calhoun took this bye week and said, John Boucher's still the guy. At least that's what he's leading us to believe with his weekly depth chart. But job one, got to secure the football, or else we're going to see other quarterbacks. Second, they got to establish the inside running game. I think you're going to see a lot of players be utilized at the fullback position as they try to figure out who they can rely on. And a lot of it all starts up front, right? With the offensive line, certainly, but finding that right guy to say, all right, this is our fullback, and this is the guy that we're going to roll with the rest of the way. I think a lot of guys are auditioning for that role tomorrow. But the problems that Air Force needs to fix for Wyoming are the issues they've had this season, all 3 games, and it's located on the offensive side of the football. So if they're able to do those things, and if they can't do it against Wyoming, I don't know who they're going to do it against, because Wyoming's allowing nearly 200 yards on the ground. Allowing 200 yards on the ground. They are well into triple digits in terms of their ranking in the country in rush defense. The next team on their schedule that is in the same neighborhood is San Diego State, and they don't play until the very end of the season. That would be far too late for Air Force to get right running the football. It's got to be tomorrow. You got to see signs of it tomorrow. And if they're able to do that, and if John Boucher plays better at the quarterback position, I think Air Force should beat Wyoming. And you'll feel like all is not lost, and there won't be a bad vibe going into the Navy game next week. I think tomorrow is vitally important. You can look back at these 3 games and go, okay, maybe not as bad. Just in terms of the result. Some of the things you saw are quite concerning, right? And that's why they have to get those things right moving forward. But the results where they stand right now, given the last 2 opponents they played, I think you feel better. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to use it. You feel a little bit better about those losses because San Jose State, Ken Niamon-Lolo has something going with them. And then Baylor is, it took a Shedeur Sanders rabbit out of a hat for Baylor not to walk away from Boulder with a win. But all of what I just said completely goes out the window if they lose again in Laramie. They can't. Can't lose tomorrow. Got to get it done. And there are easily identifiable ways that they can get right, beat Wyoming, and make you feel better about the direction they're going this season. That game can be heard at 6 o'clock tomorrow night over on our sister station, 740 KVOR, with Jim Arthur and Jesse Kurtz, if you are so inclined. Talk more about this game with Brent Bergman of the Gazette next hour, and I'll also talk to him about our next topic, which is the Mountain West, which both Air Force and Wyoming pledged their quote-unquote undying loyalty to. And now that the Mountain West has been solidified, they got to expand. And they are going into a territory that college football fans are not too happy about. I'll explain next on Extra Sports 1300. It's the most wonderful time of the year. No, not Christmas, fall. And we want to help you make the most of this season with $1,000 fall fund. Spend it on whatever makes you happy this fall. We'll pick 5 winners to each take home $1,000. Enter to win at extrasports1300.com. It's the $1,000 fall fund sponsored locally by Hope Online Learning Academy. So yesterday, the 7 remaining teams in the Mount West, including Air Force, pledged its fealty to the Mount West. And, of course, there was a financial consideration involved in that. But the fact of the matter is, right now, the Mount West is solidified with these teams, with these schools. Now, it's on the Mount West to win this sort of group of 5, because that's what the Pac-12 is. They're a group of 5 conference, just like the Mount West, and they are never getting back their autonomous 5 status. Never. That is done. Even if you think that with the schools that the Pac-12 poached from the Mount West, with Washington State and Oregon State, and even if they go out and get any realistic target, whether it's in the AAC, whether it's in the Sun Belt, whether it's Sacramento State moving up to Division I, no matter what it is, they will never get their autonomous 5 status back. Because this isn't about how good of a conference you are. The fact of the matter is, when the Pac-12 disintegrated into 2 teams, the big boys in college athletics, the SEC and the Big Ten, along with the ACC and Big 12, said, wait a minute, we get more money? We get more spots in the college football playoff, which means more money? You think they're ever going to give that back to the Pac-12? They are never giving that back. The number of autonomous or power conferences will only go down from here. It will never go back up, because that would mean just voluntarily giving up money that they don't have to. And I half wonder if the Big Ten and the SEC are licking their chops at the potential demise of the ACC if Florida State can pull off whatever it is that they're trying to pull off, so they could keep even more money and more spots in the college football playoff. So if that's what all this is about with the Pac-12, then they are incredibly misguided. And somebody should get to them right now and say, just stop. Because if that's your end game, you're never going to get there. If they understand that, what we have here is a conference realignment arms race between the Mount West and the Pac-12. Both of these conferences are actually not conferences. They need more teams to actually be considered a conference. So where do you go? Again, Sacramento State, thinking of elevating to the FBS level. That could be one. The state of Texas has been looked into, whether it's North Texas, UTSA, Rice. But the Mountain West did something that I think they will regret. At least if they are active on social media. Brett McMurphy of the Action Network is reporting that the latest targets of the Mount West are Northern Illinois and Toledo, who are in the MAC. The MAC is interesting. Maybe it's because I just watched the Vince McMahon documentary. But if I could make a comparison or an analogy when it comes to the MAC. I would say the MAC is the ECW of college football. It's kind of weird. It's not for everybody. But if, like the ECW, if you're into wrestling, really into wrestling, you probably like the ECW. And if you really love college football, if you are a diehard, you love Maction. And Maction in and of itself is a little quirky, right? They kind of got their own night playing on Tuesdays. The games are usually bizarre. Like there's never a normal football game. Connor Stallions will just show up in disguise at MAC games. Like weird things happen. It's odd. And you know what you're watching is not the highest level of college football. But you love it. There's just an endearing quality to Maction. And upon the reporting from Brett McMurphy and others, X went into a big old tizzy. Because the one thing that college football diehards, they could put up with a lot of this stuff that's going on. Oregon playing Ohio State or Washington going to Rutgers this weekend. That's okay. They'll put up with a lot of stuff. Do not touch Maction. Leave it alone. Don't you be poaching Taz from ECW. You leave them there. Social media was very upset about the Mount West keeping an eye on the MAC. And the MAC has kind of stayed out of all of this. You notice that? I feel like I'm pretty into this. I haven't heard a lot of poaching from the MAC. And I would imagine part of that is, you know, the prestige is not there. The juicy television markets are not there. So I think there's a reason, but it just seems like it's open season on everybody except the MAC. And the Mount West was like, here's an untapped market. And now you know part of the reason why nobody has touched the MAC, because the MAC is sacred. You leave Maction alone. But the goal here for the Mount West, and it's not a novel concept. This was around the last time we realigned conferences, like 2 weeks ago or whatever, a year ago. There are two things that you can deliver to a potential television station, a cable partner, that we think is appealing. One, large DMAs, right? If you could get larger television markets, that enhances your ability to maximize your value. Don't know how much that applies to the MAC. And or you expand your footprint across the country so you can have games all day long. You can have an early window. You can have a middle of the day window. You could get a primetime slot, and then you could go Pac-12 after dark style and start something at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And that's, I think, the aim of the Mount West here. If we can spread ourselves across the country, then when we go to negotiate a new television deal, we could say you get this time zone, and this time zone. Lay them out all day long. We'll see if they're successful in all of this. But that's where they're looking. In addition to all the ones that you've probably heard before, most schools based in Texas. But I find the dynamic around this whole thing very interesting. This whole Pac-12 versus Mount West thing, interesting. Because the Pac-12 gets rated, right? And a lot of people felt terrible for the Pac-12 for getting rated like they did. But them turning around and doing the same thing to the Mount West elicits two different responses. One is this is the way the world works in college athletics. Why should the Pac-12 just say, okay, we're done, all good, hell of a run? Like, there are some people that think, well, why can't they do this? It's okay for the Big Ten to do this. It's okay for other conferences to do it. Why can't, as long as there is a breath, metaphorically speaking, in the body of the Pac-12, why wouldn't they try everything they can to ensure their survival? And then there's another faction of people that say the Pac-12, that all of this should basically end with the Pac-12. Like, sorry, the music stopped. You didn't have a chair. You're done. Do not go and raid other conferences. It's interesting, the dynamic here. I really don't. And I have an affinity for the Mount West Conference. I do. But I can't really begrudge the Pac-12 for doing what they're doing. Now, the dynamic of them agreeing to this scheduling thing and then turning around and trying to poach teams, it's not the most savory way of going about their business. And I understand that. And that's what fuels a lot of people's takes on this. But I don't have a problem with the idea that the Pac-12 is trying to do the same thing that was done to them, because that is the way this world operates. And I don't have a problem with the Mount West going right back at them. Right? I compare this to daytime talk shows. I love daytime talk shows. One of my big regrets in life is that I work for a living and can't watch more daytime talk shows because they are quite addicting and entertaining. It is a little Jerry Springer-y, if that is a word, which it is not. But it's what college athletics has devolved into. And you got to play by the rules that are there. Or at least live by the code. I don't know that there's an absence of rules, it seems like, in college athletics, but you got to conduct yourself in the same way. Good guys aren't winning here. That's the fact of the matter. Playing nice is not going to get you anywhere. So I have no problem with the Mount West and the Pac-12 doing everything they can to ensure their survival. The issue is, I think simultaneously they are both fighting losing battles. I just don't see, in a very crowded marketplace, how either of these conferences are going to go to a cable provider and say, our product is so much better than this other product, and you should go with us. Because if I'm a television executive, I'm going to say, the problem is you're both half a product. Like, yeah, maybe I think you could look at the Pac-12 and say right now they're probably the better conference. But they're not a conference. That's the thing. They're not a conference. They're a collection of schools. And yes, you put them side by side with what the Mount West has left, these 7 teams that have committed to the Mount West. And yeah, you could say that the Pac-12 is better. But what do you think they're going to get in a television rights deal? You know, I seem to remember a greatly depleted, or at least a conference, I believe by the same name of the Pac-12, who overestimated their worth on the open market, and it's kind of what led to all of this. And I feel like the Pac-12 is trending in that same direction. The money they're going to get from a television deal is going to be like that Utah president that screwed all of this up in the first place. When he's like, oh, that amount of money is way too low. Everyone blames George Kliavkoff. He's a commissioner. We know this about commissioners. They work for the owners. The owners in a conference are the university presidents, are the schools themselves. That's what caused all this. Sure, there was mismanagement from Kliavkoff, but what started all of this was some genius in one of the schools at Utah, advanced analytics, economics, that came up with this report, I don't know out of where, and said, no, you're worth this. That's what they went to the television providers with, and they were laughed at. So how is this going to be a better product? And then you have the Mount West that is getting X number of dollars now, and let's say they add a couple of teams that they can realistically add, they're going to get less. So I feel like the Pac-12 right now is in a situation where they're just they're falling off of a cliff and they're grabbing the Mountain West on their way down. If I didn't know better, I would think that the Pac-12 was like, you know what? It's either going to be us or no one. If we're going down, you're coming with us. Because all they're doing is ruining the Mount West while not building up a good enough product. You could be as highfalutin as you want about Boise State and Colorado State and Fresno State. Boise State's a nice addition to the Big 12. To be the best school in your conference, that's what the Mount West has had. And they're not rolling in dough. This is ego. That's what this is. There's no way that either conference going about it the way they're going about it is going to ultimately be successful. Their best shot at survival is to join forces. And they know that. And it's ego that's pushing, especially on the Pac-12 side. Like, that's where I put most of this. Because I get that the Pac-12 is trying to fight for their survival, but couldn't you do that in concert with the Mount West? Couldn't that be a viable path? And it feels like no, we want to do it our way. Neither one of these conferences are in a good place. And I don't see the schools out there that are going to elevate them to where they think they need to go. So the Mount West is looking to Raid Maction in the Pac-12 is, I don't know, looking at every single institution of higher learning in the state of Texas. I don't think it's going to work out for either one of them. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that. Coming up next, it is not a surprise, but Caitlin Clark's first season in the WNBA ends with the Rookie of the Year. We'll talk about it next.
11 breaking weather team at KKTV News. Here's your certified
Get cash.
Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC are pushing for home field advantage in the playoffs, and they'd love your support tomorrow night at Widener Field as they take on Loudoun United. Be there at 5 p.m. to get a limited edition backpack or fanny pack provided by Diversus Health. And then after the match, experience a fun fireworks show. It all goes down tomorrow, 5 o'clock at Widener Field. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. This is the most obvious thing ever, but it is in the news, breaking within the last hour, that Caitlin Clark has been named the WNBA Rookie of the Year. So A'ja Wilson wins the MVP. Caitlin Clark wins the Rookie of the Year. I have not looked at the voting. I will, because I guarantee you that somebody did not have Caitlin Clark as the Rookie of the Year. Somebody. I don't know who. They probably work for ESPN. It was as easy to make Caitlin Clark the Rookie of the Year in the WNBA as it was to make A'ja Wilson the MVP, and she was unanimous. I would hope that Caitlin Clark was unanimous. But there's always, especially with her. Does Cheryl Swoops get a vote? If she did, that would be my guess. So her first season, a historic first season where she pretty much broke every record that was available to her, given her position as a rookie. Her last game averaged, not peaked, averaged 2.5 million viewers, making it the highest viewed, most watched WNBA game on cable ever. And that sounds like a lot of words, but the fact of the matter is Caitlin Clark's presence has elevated this league to a level it has never seen. And all of these records that they're breaking are because of her. And I know that some people, Angel Reese, will be very upset with that, but it's just a fact. It's not to say there aren't other terrific basketball players in that league. Because if you were paying attention when you were watching Caitlin Clark, you saw a lot of other really good players. But there is one that stands out above all the rest. And you know that. The fact that I even have to bring this up as like some sort of my side of the argument, it's not an argument. Look at the highest rated games. Look at the games that shattered viewership records. All of them involve Caitlin Clark. Look at the boost in attendance numbers. Yeah, everybody saw upticks in their attendance. The ones that smashed attendance records were all Indiana Fever games. I don't know how you could look at Caitlin Clark's first season and not say that she absolutely delivered on the hype. And to think that there was even a question of whether she would do that as more than just the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark. Like as a basketball player, she's not the best player in the league. She has a long way to go for that. And she even said it. she's only scratching the surface. That's the thing. Caitlin Clark, by the end of her rookie year, was certainly one of the probably half dozen best players in the league, top 10. And she's going to get better. So this was one of the only years where the hype, her being a phenom, has not really matched up with the level of player, even though she was a very good player this year. Then when she wins the MVP, maybe as soon as next year, that's going to even out a little bit. But it was both. It was her level of play, but it was the phenomenon. And every turn where I was like, okay, what's going to happen now, right? The Olympic break, all that conversation with leaving her off the roster, and the WNBA did pick up where it left off. So if you thought that leaving her off of the U.S. women's basketball team was going to be a death blow to the WNBA for the rest of the season, that was not true. Not to say it still wasn't a missed opportunity from USA Basketball, or that it was the correct decision, but just the idea that people would stop paying attention because she wasn't in the Olympics. They would stop watching the second part of the WNBA season. That did not prove to be the case. The WNBA was not harmed by her exclusion from that team. We have crossed now a threshold, and we're at another stage here. This year was very bumpy. And I'm talking like the season is over. Caitlin Clark's season is over, but there are still playoffs going on, and they will still do very well viewership-wise, because exactly what the WNBA wanted did happen. People tuned in for Caitlin Clark and stuck around for everyone else. Now, without her in the playoffs, they will not max out their ratings. Whatever their ratings could be for the WNBA finals will be less than it would be if Caitlin Clark made it there. She can only do so much in 1 year. She was just a rookie, and she got Indiana to the playoffs. This was a bumpy first year of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA, and the WNBA getting to the big time, right? Being a part of the daily conversation on sports talk radio, on social media, being one of the more highly viewed sporting events of any given night or any given week. And it was bumpy. Right? All the ugliness to start, and some of the ugliness faded away, but some of it remained. And to that point, can we stop making Caitlin Clark answer for the people who are verbally abusing the Connecticut Sun players or saying things on social media? Why is it okay to put it on Caitlin Clark's shoulders to decry this kind of stuff? As if she had anything to do with it, if she provoked it in any way. But yet, and I get it. If these people are actually Caitlin Clark fans, they will listen to her. The thing you're finding out is they're not. They're not, because many Caitlin Clark fans are already or have become fans of women's basketball. And a lot of them would not be that disrespectful to other players in the league. But people look to Caitlin Clark and say, why aren't you stopping this? And then the WNBA Like, they're finding out a lot of stuff. And what they're finding out right now, and they're acting like this doesn't happen elsewhere. It does. It's ugly. It should never happen, but it happens in every sport. How often do we hear an NFL player, an NBA player, or a baseball player talking about racial epithets that are thrown their way? Things about their mother, their family, their wife. It happens because there are gross people, there are trolls in every corner of our society. And because, to be a little bit drastic, but not complete, because no one cared about the WNBA until Caitlin Clark showed up, it's a law of averages thing. The more people you bring in, the more likely it is that trolls and scumbags infiltrate the conversation. But yet Caitlin Clark is being looked to like, stop this. A lot of them aren't Caitlin Clark fans. But there's a lot of stuff about the WNBA that got a spotlight, and you're like, this needs to be better. The officiating in this league needs to be better. The players need to do a better job of entering whatever century this is when it comes to the way that they treat rookies. Okay, this isn't the 80s anymore. It's a different dynamic. And the way that the WNBA treated Caitlin Clark when she arrived was the players I'm talking about. It was like I was watching the WNBA, like the NBA back then. And I guess it makes sense because of how long the WNBA has been around. Maybe this is their bad boy Pistons era, but it's a different year and people don't like that kind of stuff. So I think they harm themselves in a lot of different ways. But because of the brilliance of Caitlin Clark, because of the brilliance of Asia Wilson, because of all these storylines, it continued to be successful. But hopefully Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA look at this season and really dive into it and say, what can we do better? Because some of the stuff that transpired this season cannot continue to happen. But as far as Caitlin Clark's concerned, I don't know what else you could ask of her. She absolutely delivered and elevated this league to a place it's never been before. And I think it has staying power. I do, because every turn I'm like, well, is it people still going to tune in? Yes. Over and over again. They keep tuning in. They're going to stay. And now you're going to add Paige Beckers. Soon you'll add Juju. League's only going to get better. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Sean Payton says it will take the Broncos' best game to win on Sunday. What does that look like? I'll tell you next. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Friday. Ryan Kaufman with you. You can watch the show live on a daily basis as long as you follow us on social media, whether it's X, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. The handle is all the same at XTRA Sports 1300. Brent Brigham, Air Force beat writer for the Gazette, will join me to talk about the enormity of tomorrow's game in Laramie for the Falcons and also the latest with the Mountain West v Pac-12. But we move to the professional ranks of the great sport of football. And I saw a headline today on ESPN that the hurricane affected the Broncos because, of course, they're on the East Coast right now practicing. They asked for special dispensation to be able to practice, stay out there, going from Tampa to New York. And I thought, whoa, this might be serious. They couldn't be out on the field today. So I'd like to dedicate the next 2 hours to discuss how detrimental that is to the Denver Broncos' chances on Sunday. They had to work on tennis courts today. And Sean Payton didn't make a big deal out of it. This is ESPN writing a headline like, okay, did a game get canceled? Was there something serious going on? No, the Broncos couldn't be outdoors and practice on the field. Okay. Yeah, that's in the middle of a hurricane. That's what you elevate to the top of the queue on your website, is that the Broncos had to practice on a tennis court. But you got your built-in excuse. Broncos lose to the Jets. It was that dang Friday practice that they had to do on a tennis court. How is Bo Nix supposed to be able to function when practicing on a tennis court? It's very delicate geniuses. This will not, and I repeat, will not change the outlook or result of this game one bit. Not one. The Broncos will not rise up and overcome these circumstances to beat the Jets, nor will the Jets take advantage of an ill-prepared Broncos team because of the Friday practice. Okay, whatever's going to happen on Sunday would have happened anyway. Whether the Broncos practice on a football field, a tennis court, a hockey rink, or they pull a Russell Wilson and do their workouts on the plane, it will not change what happens on Sunday. So just know that the outcome has been predetermined based on other factors than practicing on a tennis court. But T's and P's, for sure. But Sean Payton said today that it will take the Broncos' best game to beat the Jets. And I would agree with that. The Jets are the best team that the Broncos will go against. And they're having to do it on the road. But what does that look like? You can call them keys. You can call them a to-do list. But if the Broncos are going to play their best game, this is what it has to look like. One, they have to win the red zone. As well as the Broncos played against Tampa, they were still 50% in the red zone. Bo Nix talked about it this week. They have to be more productive down there. And they are going up against a Jets team that has been very good in the red zone so far this year. To be safe, the Broncos should just score a touchdown every time they're in the red zone. Just to be safe. Maybe they can get by with 75%, but they need to be better than the Jets in the red zone in order to win. Both sides, right? Broncos offense versus the Jets defense, Broncos defense versus the Jets offense. They have to win the red zone if they're going to win this game. 2, they have to win the running game. The Jets, there's a sentiment because of some of the things Robert Saleh has said this week. There's a belief out of New York that they can run the football against the Denver Broncos. And they will point to the yards that Bucky Irving had against the Bucs and the fact that the Denver Broncos are ranked 21st, which are all facts. I would put into context Bucky Irving's rushing yards and say that the Broncos were in a very pass expectant mindset when Bucky Irving started to run around on them. But we saw that was ultimately their downfall against Seattle, in addition to some other things. But it was that third quarter when the Seahawks ran the ball down their throats. In that third quarter, it changed the game and opened up the game for Seattle from there. So the Broncos, as much as we talk about their sacks, as much as we talk about Riley Moss and Pat Surtain on the back end, who have both been tremendous, Broncos have given up some yards in the run game. And the Jets have 2 very good backs, while the Denver Broncos, we don't know if they have one. Right? I mean, really. We don't know if the Broncos have one good running back that they can rely on to the extent that the Jets rely on their 2. We don't know that yet. We know there's a cap on Jaleel McLaughlin in terms of his run. He's not the type of back that is going to have the majority of the carries. He's that change of pace guy. He's a complimentary guy. That's who he is. And he's been pretty good at it. But they got to find a guy that they can really run with and take a higher volume of carries. Because it hasn't been Javonte Williams so far. All this week, it's been about Tyler Bidet, and for good reason. And I think Sean Payton is going to go to him a little bit earlier on Sunday than he did against Tampa. But we don't know that Tyler Bidet is ultimately the answer. It's just everything we've seen says that he has earned more touches, that you need to see more of him. He still hasn't had a workload that you say, okay, RB1, that's the dude. Forget, bench Javonte Williams, get rid of him, whatever. We're not at that point yet. But Tyler Bidet has shown enough in limited carries and limited opportunities that you want to see more. And I think this should be a big motivator to Javonte Williams. You don't think he's heard all of this stuff? The entire week has been about 4 things. Broncos staying out on the East Coast. Bo Nix, the defense, Tyler Bidet. That's what this week of Broncos football has been about. You don't think Javonte Williams has heard some of that? I hope if you're a Broncos fan, you hope that he does. Understanding that the New York Jets are a very good defense, and there may not be a ton of rushing yards for the Broncos to get anyway. If Javonte Williams has, and I hesitate to say something left because I don't want to make it seem like his career is over. But the notion that he is the Broncos' best running back, he better do something to challenge the notion that he's not anymore. Because that's the narrative. And it should be motivating to a guy like Javonte Williams, who put in a lot of work this offseason to, in his mind, be more effective than he was last year. If there's any game where we at least see flashes of what Javonte Williams was before the injury, I got to imagine it'd be here. Because if Tyler Bidet continues to go the way he is, and Jaleel McLaughlin brings his dynamic to this offense, in 2 weeks, Audric Estime is going to be back. Sean Payton has said it's difficult to get 3 running backs, consistent carries, and now there's going to be a 4th added to the mix. Javonte Williams may essentially become Samaje Perine in a couple of weeks. A carry here and there, pass protection. So, I'm not saying Javonte Williams has to run all over the New York Jets. He's got to show some flashes of the old Javonte Williams. And then number 3 is Bo Nix cannot outplay Aaron Rodgers, or should not outplay Aaron Rodgers, or doesn't need to outplay Aaron Rodgers. The fact of the matter, the worst thing that could happen is that people, most importantly, the coaching staff, puts Bo Nix in a situation where he has to match Aaron Rodgers throw for throw. He's not ready for that. I don't care what you saw in Tampa. He is not ready. All of these other things need to work. We're still in the Broncos need to help Bo Nix more than they need to ask him to help them. And the worst thing that could happen on Sunday is this thought of, Aaron Rodgers scored. Now Bo Nix has got to go out and score. He's not going to keep pace. Sean Payton cannot go back to the Seattle game. And this situation leads to what happened against Seattle, where Bo Nix is throwing the ball way too much, and shocker, Broncos lose. They got to keep him efficient. They got to keep his confidence level up. They got to utilize his legs and his escapability. Still got to do that. But more importantly than all of that, anything that Bo Nix needs to do, Broncos need to help him. Don't fall behind by a couple of scores early. Become one-dimensional. Ask Bo Nix to do everything, because that's not going to end well. And then you worry about, okay, are we back to square one here with Bo Nix? You can see progress from Bo Nix even in a loss, even if his numbers aren't as good as they were against Tampa, by just maintaining the efficiency level. Not turning the football over. Using his legs when appropriate. If the Broncos are going to play their best game and beat the Jets, that's what has to happen. They got to win the red zone. They got to win the running game. And they can't ask Bo Nix to match Aaron Rodgers throw for throw. Take your thoughts on Sunday's game. How you feeling about it, Broncos country? 719-247-1313. Right now, New York still pretty strong favorite as they are refreshing. Still 7.5-point favorites, which is a big line. And so that's widespread. These other games, 3.5, 1, 3, 4.5, 2.5. The bookmakers are saying this one's going to be one of the more lopsided contests in week 4. No matter what side of Sunday's game that you are betting, I would encourage you to bet it on Circa Sports Colorado app. That is now my new betting app of choice. And the reason is they make it better for the better. And the way they do that is they keep as little money as possible on big markets like futures bets and golf tournaments. They strive to make all of their games a minus 110 split, just like Denver and New York. These other books, they'll squeeze you with their higher holds, not Circa Sports Colorado. And they're so confident that they have the best lines and that you're going to enjoy your experience. They want you to shop around. Keep your options open. Keep the app that you already have. Compare and contrast. That's what they told me, and now that's the only sports betting app I have currently on my phone. Download the Circa Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 or older and present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Brent Brigham talks Air Force football next. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Dateline, Colorado Springs. Air Force makes the right call by sticking with the Mount West, even without large bonus. The author of that work of prose is Brent Brigham, Air Force beat writer for the Gazette, and he joins me now. I would say, why did you say that in the headline? But I think I know how the newspaper business goes. So why did your headline writer write that based on what you put in your column?
I just feel like that's when you really surveyed all the options that Air Force could have been looking at. I just think this is the one that makes the most sense for Air Force. If they had gone to the Pac-12, it would have cost them a lot of money, and they would be essentially talent underdogs in every game. They have a huge winning streak against Colorado State. They played Fresno State very well. They competed with Boise State, but every week would be a challenge. And I just don't think that's where Air Force belongs. I just don't think they are of the mind of those teams, especially once you throw Oregon State and Washington State in. I just don't think those are peers. And to get into that situation by paying, the exorbitant $17 million exit fee, that just isn't a good situation. The AAC also, you're in a league where you're traveling all the time, and it's going to cost you a lot of money to do that. Or you stay put, where there's still, Wyoming, Nevada, UNLV, New Mexico, teams that and that, draw just as well as anybody else when you look at the attendance figures. So, and you get paid at least $20 million, and there could be more down the road to do this. I just think this was the right call at this point.
So much of this conference realignment has been put through the lens of football, and there are obvious reasons to that. But do you think that in Air Force's case, that they really looked at how this would work with all of their Mountain West teams? Do you think that this decision maybe in some ways is more looking out for those other sports than necessarily football? Because from a cost perspective, travel and stuff once a week, the AAC would not be for football would make a little bit more sense than it would for men's and women's basketball. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Air Force, probably more than any other schools involved in this, were thinking about all of those variables, because from what I understand, the main driver of this was a new superintendent. And, he is not really a sports guy from what I know by nature. And, his priorities are the academy and the cadet athletes and their experience and how this all fits into the mission of that. So I really think the prospect of sending those teams on the road constantly, and I had heard that the AAC would have been all sports. I know Army and Navy are only there for football. I do think they were looking at Air Force for all of them, and it just would have been a nightmare scenario when you're talking about midweek volleyball travel, baseball completely gone, plus football, basketball. Like, it's just so much travel for these guys and the expense of it, but also just the time away. Football wouldn't have been that bad because, it's every other week, and you're basically on the same travel schedule. You just add a couple hours. But I just think the whole picture really probably ruled out the AAC without having, without being privy to those conversations. That's certainly the assumption I made.
Brent Brigham of the Gazette, my guest. I guess the ultimate question now is, will Air Force have a choice? You talk about the competitiveness. I mean, where do you look at where things stand between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West? Do you think that the Mountain West is a better conference, a more viable conference than what the Pac-12 is building now that they have these 7 teams that have said we're staying?
No, I don't think. I mean, I think you can just look at the portfolios of these teams, especially over the past decade or so, and it's very clear they poach the better football teams by and large. Certainly with the recent exception of UNLV, and then Air Force. Air Force could certainly be. CSU has not been more successful than Air Force, but when you look by and large, the whole, yes, it's a better league competitively in football and in basketball. But again, I just don't know that from Air Force's perspective. If you're Wyoming, it'd be better to be in that league because, you want to be with the best. I just don't know that Air Force needs that week in and week out competition at that level to accomplish anything. Because I still think if they win the games in their conference, whatever it is, they're going to get national attention. They're going to be in the conversation to get, and if they win their conference, and especially if they're unbeaten, they're going to be in the conversation to get in the college football playoff. And if they're bowl eligible, they're always going to be looked at by a good bowl just because they're a national brand. So I just don't see why Air Force would need the extra burden of playing above their head basically every week. Whereas here, they're more among peers in terms of competitive level. And I just think that's a better atmosphere long term. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they need that drive from Boise State, and they need, to be tested every week. I just don't see what that is, particularly when you stay here. You get the bonus money. Had you gone there, you've got to pay $17 million that they just don't have laying around, as far as I know.
Well, but then a possible reality here is that these two conferences cannot function separately, and then they end up in whatever they want to call that combined league at some point. Do you still kind of think that could be the end game here, even though it seems like right now the Mountain West and the Pac-12 hate each other?
I don't know who hates each other. I just think, I think certainly from Oregon State, Washington State's perspective, they wanted to do everything they could to be in as close to a Power 5 situation, or, Power 4 now, that they could, because that was what they were until 18 months ago or whatever it was when all this started falling apart. So, they wanted the cream of the crop to basically simulate a Power 5 situation, even though it's not. Ultimately, I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about the payout's going to be per school anyway, so the pot, would it really be that different if they were together versus separate? I don't know. And the way this thing has shifted and turned, for the past 2 weeks, I really have no clue where it's going. But obviously the Mountain West, bonded together, put this in writing, agreed to some payouts. I think they have solidified their stance, but there's certainly caveats within that. Like if all the teams decide to do something, there won't be a penalty or something like that. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do think Air Force found a really good spot for Air Force. And again, Air Force's situation is not the same as UNLV's, right, and Wyoming's and New Mexico's, but for Air Force, given its, the way it has to recruit and everything else, I just think this was as good a situation as it could have found itself, other than, if we could reverse it 2 weeks ago and just keep these teams from ever leaving, that would have been better. But right, given everything that is what it is, this is a good spot. Brent
Brigham, my guest. Believe it or not, I know you know this, but there's a football game tomorrow, and the sport of football is a thing still. It's not just the sport of conference realignment. The magnitude, the importance of tomorrow's game for Air Force in your mind, Brent Brigham?
Hadn't really thought about the magnitude, because I just don't know that this is going to be a season for Air Force where there is much in the way of magnitude. I just haven't seen enough yet to think that, okay, if this breaks their way, then the path opens up like this. It's a team that hasn't looked very good so far. So the magnitude of this is just, can they look like an Air Force team? Can they go up there and perform in a place that Air Force has really struggled for the past, since I've been on the beat? I haven't seen them win in Laramie, and I've been covering this team since late in the 2012 season. So it's an important game because Air Force hasn't shown that it can be competitive yet. So from that perspective, yes, it matters a lot, and it's a chance to get a win against a team that is 0-4. You can't waste these opportunities. But should Air Force lose, I don't think this is really going to change the stakes of the season, because I just don't know what the season is going to look like based on what I've seen so far.
I was going to ask you if there's something to this Air Force team playing in Laramie. Now I know what it was, because the last time Air Force won in Laramie was right before you started on the beat.
Exactly right.
Have you? Does the old ball coach know about this?
He knows everything, so I'm sure he is very much aware of all of that. But I don't think I'm the variable, and they have all been close games. I was looking back through them. Every single one, came down to the fourth quarter, and Air Force just came up short. So it's been a very entertaining series up there, but Air Force has not won.
Well, and look, you could, if we were on the, talking about the Wyoming Cowboys, we could almost say the same thing about Wyoming going down to Colorado Springs. That's how it plays out sometimes when teams are at a pretty close level, is home field advantage makes a difference. So we'll see if that plays a factor tomorrow. Were you surprised that, and I know, college coaches dabble in the dark arts sometimes when it comes to depth charts and things like that, but were you surprised that it appears that John Boucher will be the starting quarterback tomorrow?
I wasn't surprised that that's what's on the depth chart. The two other guys who came in, nobody took the reins and looked like, okay, this is the obvious answer. So from that, because of that, I wasn't surprised. But if they do go with John Boucher and he continues to struggle, I think it'll be a quicker hook, just because you can't just keep, you got to try something different if it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously he's the guy they identified last season as an option, and then all through the off season and now. So there's something they have seen they really like. We just haven't seen it really in a game yet. But, who knows what they're going to do. That depth chart is not worth a lot this week, because I would think that with the extra week off, there's probably going to be some lineup changes, but we just need to see what they are when they actually take the field.
Would you say that the inside running game specifically of Air Force may be of more importance than maybe getting John Boucher going, whatever that looks like, whatever John Boucher can bring them? Is the main thing trying to establish that inside running game with the fullbacks?
Yeah, I think that's where Air Force always starts, and they haven't been able to do that. So, and that's, you can't blame fullbacks necessarily. It's just the team effort. It's everything going into that. And it, could be quarterback reads when he gets to the line, getting them into the right play if the defense, if they're aligned to stop the inside dive. So there are so many things at play that, they just need somebody who can step up and just show that, hey, even if it's not there, I'm going to make something out of nothing. Cade Harris has kind of been that guy on the outside, but, he's just, he's 165 pounds or so. Like, he's just not the guy you can lean on to carry you. You've got to have somebody up the middle doing that. I think the Dylan Carson injury in the opener was big. I think a lot of things are just working against this team right now. And that's why I say this game is important, just because we need to see if they can start to find those answers and get on track.
But to turn it the other way towards Wyoming, what do you think is most concerning to Troy Calhoun and his staff about this Wyoming team, albeit a winless football team right now?
Yeah, they've got a multi-dimensional quarterback, which Wyoming has used in the past to hurt Air Force, going back to Josh Allen. Those guys who can just decide to put their head down and run and make 6-7 yards, that's a huge deal when Air Force otherwise has a play defended. So if he can move the ball, it's Evan Svoboda, the quarterback. That's a big factor, because if they can just move the chains, pick up first downs, because they do have, they have some weapons on the outside. They can chuck the ball downfield, just not at a high percentage so far, but that's certainly something they have in their arsenal. And then their defense, they've given up a lot of yards, but it's, the coach was promoted from defensive coordinator. That's his DNA. That's what he wants the team to be about. So this is, their chance to play a running team and really kind of buckle down in that area. So it's going to be a tough matchup, but Wyoming has struggled. Air Force has struggled. These teams are averaging, I think, 12 points a game for Wyoming and about 10 points for Air Force. So who knows what we're going to get? I don't know if it's going to be 6-3 or it could be 35-32. You just never know, but Certainly on paper, it doesn't look like an offensive shootout.
Well, you could follow Brent on X at Brent Brigham, read his stuff at gazette.com, and maybe if you prod him enough on social media, you can get a Royals take out of him. I do want to ask you in all seriousness, because I'm about to talk about the MLB playoffs that are approaching here pretty soon. Your level of confidence in your beloved Royals.
Asked me a week ago, and I would have been no confidence. Then they go out and sweep the Nationals and get back in position. I like the way they're pitching. Their pitching is carrying them to the finish line, and that's a good thing. Especially when you've got a superstar like Bobby Witt Jr. So if they can continue to pitch like this and then just get somebody hot, they're going to be a really difficult team to play. So we'll see what happens. But I really like the way the pitching staff is throwing right now.
Yeah, kind of feel like they might be in the American League, that proverbial team that no one wants to play. Let somebody else knock them out. We'll see how it goes. Brent, appreciate the time. Safe travels, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Yep, Brent Brigham, the Gazette. Terrific. Joining us here on Drive Time Sports. Yeah, I do want to talk about MLB playoffs. Not that I'm gonna, break them down in earnest. And that's kind of the point. I'll explain it coming up next. Got a busy sports day for you tomorrow here on Extra Sports 1300 at 10 o'clock in the morning. A big-time Big 12 matchup between Oklahoma State and Kansas State. And then at 6, it will be the Switchbacks taking on Loudoun United. Roland Vargas and myself on the call. And then on Sunday, a doozy of a Sunday night game. Wouldn't you agree? Buffalo, Baltimore. Check out our full live sports schedule. You're going to need it. Next week, Air Force hockey starts. Avs Nuggets just around the bend. Go to extrasports1300.com. A reminder that you can listen to all of our live sports this weekend on the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. So the MLB season is going to wrap up in the next couple of days. And then it will begin the postseason. And I'm going to try and calibrate the way my expectations and the way I view the MLB playoffs. Because I think what it's turned into is March Madness. You know, in a sport like baseball, in a league like MLB, like the other major professional sports, for the longest time, there was a certain level of expectation that you go into it with that is higher than what it is with college sports, especially March Madness, right? Like you may think that Duke or North Carolina, although UConn's been a pretty good bet, but most of the time you go in, maybe you feel strongly about who you're picking for your Final Four, but you understand that your bracket could be completely torched within a couple of days. And that's part of the reason why we love it. But when it comes to major professional sports, as much as we say that we hate the Chiefs or the Patriots or the Lakers or the Spurs or the Warriors, there's something comforting about the playoffs that may inevitably and for years ended up with LeBron James facing off against the Golden State Warriors. Right? It got to a degree where you got very tired of it. But ultimately, you do want the Warriors to stick around in the postseason. You do want LeBron James. Whether you love him or you hate him, you kind of want him around. And there's something comforting knowing, like, you know what? Yeah, I kind of know the best teams are going to win. Right? And maybe that's what it is. I don't want to put out any specific team because everyone has their own reasons for, you know, you may be a Jets fan and so you hate the Patriots, but maybe you don't hate the Chiefs as much. But there's a predictability to the playoffs in major professional sports that is comforting in a way, right? You know what you're going to get, and there's no, I mean, honestly, every once in a while, Dikembe Mutombo will end up on the floor holding the basketball, and there will be the Warriors against the Mavericks. Like, there will be some upsets. But really look at it. Really look at baseball for a very long time, hockey, NBA, NFL. They're fairly predictable. But as long as you don't have a built-in bias towards certain teams, I think that inherently we do want the best teams to play for a championship. Well, what has happened with Major League Baseball is that it appears it's going a completely different way. And last year was a very dramatic show of this with the Rangers and the Diamondbacks. But I think my enjoyment level watching the MLB playoffs is going to be derived from consuming it like I consume the NCAA tournament. I may have my thoughts. I may have teams that I would like to see advance, but ultimately I am here for the chaos. And I think that's what has caused a lot of people to be very upset with the way that the new expanded MLB postseason is because we kind of don't want that chaos. And this year is a great example. The best series for baseball is Yankees-Dodgers. Like, I don't care how you feel about those two teams. You can acknowledge that Rob Manfred is sitting there like Mr. Burns behind the swivel chair with his looking out the window and doing the excellent thing. First over the demise of the A's. He takes great pride in that, which is an absolute joke what they are doing to the Oakland A's. But he very much wants Yankees-Dodgers. Fox, I believe, is the home for the World Series again. They want Yankees-Dodgers. And most of the people without a dog in the fight want Yankees-Dodgers. The star power of Judge and Ohtani, two storied franchises, big markets, that series has it all. That was my preseason prediction. Well, 162 games go by, and I am far less confident in both of those baseball teams. Dodgers rotation, Yankees bullpen. I don't know how good I feel about it. I'm going to stick with it. I don't feel good about it. And if it's not Yankees-Dodgers, I think I'm going to be okay. Because my experiment I'm doing is if I consume baseball like I have consumed college basketball for most years, and I think most people would say that they consume it this way. Very regional, obviously, based on your favorite conference, your favorite team, your favorite, whatever. But there's also, we go into the NCAA tournament knowing that we don't know nearly enough to fill out our bracket. Right? We don't know all these teams. And going into the MLB playoffs, I was just talking with Brent Bergman. How much do you know about the Kansas City Royals? You probably heard Bobby Witt Jr. Yes, Salvador Perez still plays for him. How many other players? Nope, not Mike Moustakas, not Eric Hosmer. Brent speaking like a fan with a certain level of not wanting to get his heart broken. That's the vibe I got from Brent when it comes to his Royals. I think they're dangerous. They're dangerous because their starting rotation is really good. And they have a player in Bobby Witt Jr. that can absolutely catch fire. And that's what you need, right? And it sounds like the NCAA tournament. You got defense. You got a star that can pull a Carmelo Anthony and just carry a team that you don't know much about outside of that one player to the championship. And if I watch it that way, I think I'll stick with it a little bit more and embrace the chaos. Now, there is a level, there's a ceiling here on this. Because I've said this about the NCAA tournament. We don't want 4 Cinderellas. We don't want 2 Cinderellas. We don't want 4 in the Final Four. We don't want 2 in the championship. We don't. And history proves when it's George Mason, or whether it's name your favorite Cinderella, we grow tired of them. And we want to see the blue bloods. We want to see the star players. We grow tired over a month with the Cinderellas. We love them the first couple weekends. We love the Cinderellas. It's what makes that tournament great. But we grow tired of them. Same thing with baseball. Texas, Arizona is too much. It can't be Kansas City, San Diego. Would be, I guess, the closest thing that I could, or Detroit in San Diego. Right? Can't be that. It's too far. Too much. Texas and Arizona were too much. But Yankees, Padres, Dodgers, Royals, Phillies and Guardians. I don't know how that doesn't sound as good. But a little bit of chaos and the expectation of chaos. I don't know, because I don't give Ron Manfred credit for anything. But I don't know if it was the intention to do it this way. But you have, in a lot of ways, becoming the most unpredictable playoff that we have in professional sports. And if you watch it that way, if you expect the chaos, then it might be a little bit easier to stomach if Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani are done after the first series that they play in. That's what I'm doing. See, because, if you listen to this show, I have lost more and more interest, more and more love for the game that I was obsessed with growing up. Because of the team that I most closely associate myself with, but also because of the product. But if I consume this knowing that I don't know as much about baseball as I do some other sports, expecting some chaos, maybe I won't be so upset if we don't end up with Ohtani versus Judge, although that would still be the best matchup. Coming up next, we'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show, and I'll take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Hello there. Welcome in Friday edition, Drive Time Sports. Friday edition is basically the same as the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday edition. Still me, Ryan Kaufman, talking sports with you, but it's fun. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or through the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. If you'd like to interact with the program, you could do so on the text line or by calling in 719-247-1313. Don't be shy. Got some texts out there on the line that I will get to here shortly. In the meantime, let's hit the three stories that are driving the show. All right, story number one is that the Denver Broncos could not practice today out on the football field. They had to move to tennis courts at whatever country club or billionaire getaway that they're at. I'm still not fully sure what it is or that they're using for their practice facility this week, but because of the adverse weather due to the hurricane, they had to practice on tennis courts today, which will no doubt greatly disadvantage them for their game against the Jets on Sunday. I cannot tell you. I was thinking the Broncos would win. This is a deal breaker. Jets by 100. Now, to Sean Payton's credit, they did not make a big fuss over it as much as some of the headline writers and beat writers did. Sean Payton felt like they got done all they needed to, despite the incredibly difficult circumstances they found themselves in today. As far as that game goes, the stuff that will really impact Sunday's game, Sean Payton said the Broncos would have to play their best game in order to beat the Jets, and I would concur with his assessment of things because the Jets, when you take into account the quality of opponent and the location, this is their most difficult game. And in a lot of ways, you could look at the upside of this game and say, boy, if Bo Nix plays like he did against Tampa, against New York, with Aaron Rodgers on the other sideline, Broncos fans, you guys are going to be so insufferable. You will, but you deserve to be. Because if Bo Nix goes out there and backs up what he did against Tampa, against that team, oh boy. That's going to be big. But I don't expect Bo Nix to continue what he did against Tampa because he's still a rookie. Growth is not linear. He's going to take steps back along the way, and the Jets are better than Tampa. And their defense is better than Tampa. Doesn't mean you can't still find some progress. But the worst thing that can happen, and the way that the Broncos do not play their best game, is if they ask Bo Nix to match Aaron Rodgers throw for throw. That won't work. They go back to the formula against Seattle. Fall behind, don't run the football. Bo Nix throws it 40 times. They're going to get smoked. Bo Nix will start making mistakes. They need to keep him efficient. They need to let him utilize his legs. It's far more important for the rest of the team, and this has been a consistent theme through the first month of the season, to help out Bo more than he helps them. 2 keys for me. If the Broncos are going to beat the Jets, they got to win in the red zone. By whatever means necessary. I would sure love to see Bo Nix finally throw a touchdown, but gotta win the red zone. Because on the other side is one of the most efficient red zone offenses in the NFL so far this year. Broncos got to get the better of that. They're not going to beat the Jets settling for 40-yard Will Lutz field goals. Got to get the ball into the end zone if they're, or I guess 40 would be too long, but you get my point. Settling for red zone field goals from Will Lutz is not going to beat the Jets. And if the defense can continue some semblance of what they've been doing and keep the Jets out of the end zone, I'm not saying the Broncos offense has to be 100%. I just think the team that does better in the red zone, converts more red zone opportunities into touchdowns, will ultimately win this game. And it's still something that even Bo Nix admits the Broncos are a bit of a work in progress at. And I think they got to get the better of the running game. Defense has got to slow down the running game of the Jets, and the Broncos have got to find a running game. If they do that, they'll be able to keep pressure off of Bo Nix and just let him play a little bit more freely, let him play more within himself. But on the Broncos in their running game, I wonder about this. And this is just, I was talking with somebody today and this thought popped into my head. You know, we've been showering Tyler Bidet with, probably a poor choice of words, with flowers this week and demanding that we see more of him. And I think that's right. Everything that he has shown tells you he deserves more. You want to see more. But I can't help but wonder if some of this Tyler Bidet love has made its way to Javonte Williams. There may not be, and in fact, I know there's not another Denver Bronco under more fire right now than Javonte Williams. Even in a game where it seemed like everything worked for the Denver Broncos, he was not effective again. If Javonte Williams can get back to what he was before the injury, I would think he would be motivated enough to show some of it on Sunday. The Jets will have something to say about it for sure. But a few Javonte Williams broken tackles, one less fumble, I think this is a game where Javonte Williams needs to kind of stand up and say, no, you don't need to marginalize me. I can still run the rock. I got to imagine that he is as motivated as anybody on the Denver Broncos to go out and play well. We'll see if it manifests itself. But I was thinking about that earlier today. Story number 2. Now that the Mount West has solidified itself with its 7 teams, including Air Force, 7 schools. I always say teams, but you get my point. 7 schools. Now it's time for the Mount West to look to expand as they compete in this conference realignment arms race with now their mortal enemy, the Pac-12. But I will say that the Mount West is looking in a direction that they should not look. And they found out over the last 24 hours. Reports that the Mountain West has made overtures towards Northern Illinois, who most is most now famous for beating Notre Dame a few weeks ago, and Toledo. And you say, well, that doesn't really move the needle for me. It gets them teams in another time zone. Allows a potential television partner to have more wall-to-wall games if they so choose. Hitting those different time zones. That's why. But they shouldn't. Because Maction holds a special place in the hearts of college football fans. And I think for the most part, the Mount West has won the PR battle with the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 in many ways is viewed as the bad guy. Don't tempt that by trying to poach teams from the MAC. The MAC is the ECW of college football. Major college football is WWE. If most of the group of five is, well, maybe the Big 12, let's say. Maybe the SEC Big 10 is WWE. Big 12 and ACC are WCW. But, like, not at the height of the Monday Night Wars. I'm losing people. Maction is like the ECW. It's a cult following. It's not as good of a product. It's very quirky. But people love it. They play on Tuesday nights. Something crazy always happens. College football fans got very defensive when they read on social media that the Mountain West was trying to poach two teams from the MAC. You kill the AAC, you kill the Sun Belt, you go after the Pac-12, you leave Maction alone. That is the overwhelming sentiment from college football fans. Now, Northern Illinois has said that no official approach has been made by the Mountain West. We'll see. If the Mountain West is looking to beat the Pac-12 or at least get a big win over the Pac-12 to stack wins after they were able to keep Air Force and UNLV, I think Memphis would be where to go. Like, I'm kind of into the psychological warfare of all of this. The Memphis AD basically said the Pac-12's deal wasn't good enough. They want to leave. They are ready to leave, but the deal has to be right. I don't know if they have any money left over after they promised Air Force and UNLV all that money. What a blow to the Pac-12 it would be for the Mount West to grab Memphis, to call up Memphis and say, we got your better offer. I think that's where they should be looking. Maybe it's too big of a swing for them to take. I don't know. I think it requires big swings. Just leave Maction alone. Do your thing. We understand the way of the world in college athletics. Leave the MAC alone. Story number 3 today. No surprise, but it is official. Caitlin Clark has won WNBA Rookie of the Year after she broke basically every rookie record, led the WNBA in assists, and guided a pretty sorry franchise into the postseason. And while the WNBA season continues and we got 2 really good semifinal matchups, I mean, this is the creme de la creme, these teams that are left. Connecticut, Minnesota, Vegas, New York. The WNBA season is not over, and I hope I'll be watching more, even with Caitlin Clark now eliminated, and I hope people continue to watch, even though Caitlin Clark has been eliminated. But certainly the ratings and the interest is not going to be as high without Caitlin Clark. She can't do everything. right? What she has done in this season has been something that we have not seen any singular athlete do for their sport since, well, Caitlin Clark for women's college basketball, but another athlete other than Caitlin Clark that has elevated their league like Caitlin Clark has, it has been a very long time. And even if you want to go Bird Magic, there were two of them that were on equal footing in terms of their star power. What Caitlin Clark did this year, I don't know what else you could ask her to do. Made the Fever a playoff team. Got better as the season went on. Ended up probably one of the 10 best players in the WNBA this year. Conservatively. And she's only going to get better. That's the scary thing for the rest of the league. But acknowledging that the WNBA still has more season left, and I'm sure the Caitlin Clark discourse will not end with her elimination from the postseason. I hope this was a learning experience for the WNBA. They were thrust into the limelight after being without the spotlight for many years. And they got exposed a little bit. The bickering, the cheap shots, even the more normal basketball stuff like officiating. This was an informative first year for people who were just starting to tune into the WNBA, and they did not like everything they saw. And what I hope is that the WNBA takes note of this. Not just the Kathy Engelbert in the league, the players. I cannot go another season with this kind of discourse. I'm sorry. This is enough is enough. And I think Angel Reese is stoking it via social media over the last couple of days. It's got to stop. Like, enough. We don't have this in other sports to this degree. It doesn't help the league. Not in the long run. And the product was good enough this year that people stuck around to watch it. For year one, the discourse, even though a lot of it I didn't like, I could see the benefit of keeping it in the news cycle. Let's move away from some of this and stop making Caitlin Clark answer for a bunch of trolls on Twitter that have nothing to do with her. Let's accept Caitlin Clark into the league now. All right. No more welcome to the league rook stuff that I think the WNBA took a little bit too far. It certainly got better as the discourse. I don't know that did. Some of the welcome to the league rook stuff did kind of taper off. So that was good. But let's have none of it next year. And don't even do it to Paige Beckers. Like, don't. Just play. Come on. But great for the WNBA. Attendance through the roof, ratings through the roof, merchandise sales. It's a great year. And I think they have some staying power. I think people are going to stick around. And you have Juju Watkins and Paige Beckers, not in that order, but soon to arrive. This was kind of a experimental year in many ways, kind of point out some of the flaws, see if this league was ready for the big time. And now you button things up and you get going because I think people are going to stick around. And that's a good thing. 719-24-7-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Drive Time Sports on this Friday continues next. Trans-Siberian Orchestra returns to Colorado Springs with its winter tour, The Lost Christmas Eve, for 2 spectacular shows on November 17th at the Broadmoor World Arena. If you would like to get your tickets, you can do so by going to extrasports1300.com. And if you're listening to the show on extrasports1300.com, should be right there on the front page. Think that makes it the unofficial start to the holiday season, though, when TSO rolls through Colorado Springs. Taking your thoughts on this Friday, 709-247-1313. Brett says, given the fact the Broncos had to practice on a tennis court today, no doubt their backhand will be a key in the Jets game. Very good. I just can't believe that ESPN looped in. So the App State game got out canceled. And they put in the same headline that it hampers the Broncos because they had to move to a tennis court. Like, this is, come on. Anyway, Steve G says, Caitlin Clark singly resurrected the WNBA. How many more years was the NBA going to financially support them? I don't think for too much longer, so ladies, be grateful she came along when she did. I don't know if anything, honestly, I think the NBA is going to hold tight to the WNBA. But if you're talking about, the level at which they subsidize the league, they're going to want some of their monies back. That's why I thought it was so silly when the leader of the players union is like, this isn't enough for the new TV deal. It's like, you've been losing money every year of your existence. And now that you've shown an uptick, and we'll see where profits got to be up. I mean, the WNBA is saying, what's a 48% attendance jump. And in Indiana Fever games, it's probably like 100%. They had to move all these games. They had to have turned a profit, I would think. But now they're like, we need more. No. But your point about, I'm not saying that the rest of the league has to bow down to Caitlin Clark. It's never been about that. But just the backhanded way they would talk about her. And the shots that some players would take against her. It's just like, I'm not saying that you got to thank her. Or you got to clear a path down the lane so she can have an easy layup. I'm just saying, like, you've heard the discourse. And it was just, it was a lot of envy and jealousy. It just was. And I can't sit here and act like I wouldn't be, if I had been grinding in that league for years and playing at a high level and wasn't getting, now that all these fans are there, I probably would be a little bit, but I would hope that I would be a little bit better about intimating my thoughts. Right? Say the right things. But there was a lot of that. There was. But it did taper off a little bit. Some people, Cheryl Swoops, did keep it up, did commit to the bit the whole way through the year. But I think a lot of what fellow players said about Caitlin Clark and the way they treated her did taper off as the season wore on. But it shouldn't happen. Don't have to bend the knee, but understanding that she's benefiting you, that you're benefiting from this. I think that realization set in. There are a few more. You know, the Connecticut Sun had some comments before their playoff series that they don't get the limelight or the attention. And anytime anybody talks about stuff like that, it feels like it's a little dig at the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark. But that's fine. Like, look at what Michael Malone did with the Nuggets, right? It's not that different. You know, just saying that we don't get the spotlight, we get disrespected. Like, that's a normal thing that happens throughout sports. So it did taper off, which was good. She was awesome for the league. And I can't even imagine if she's playing for titles and winning MVPs, how much more her popularity could grow. And now we're locked in. We're locked in with these players at the collegiate level, like Paige Beckers and like Juju Watkins. Now we're excited to see them play in the WNBA. And it will just add to it. There will be more, because a lot of people did have to play catch up on Asia Wilson. Right? Diana Taurasi, you knew. But perhaps you didn't know how good Asia Wilson is. Maybe you didn't know that much about Kelsey Plum or how good the Connecticut Sun are. And some of these other players. There's a lot of really good players. We had to play catch up on some of them, but everybody coming into the league now, there won't be that. And this league will, I think, continue to grow. I saw a Denver Post column today that maybe it's late in the show to be introducing this, but just because I'm on this train of thought, Denver has been trying to get an expansion franchise. They just expanded earlier this year. It was Golden State got a team. Toronto's getting a team. Portland. And Denver has been one of the cities that has been actively trying. It's kind of like the altitude plus thing. Yesterday, the question, like, would you go? Would you patronize a WNBA team in Denver? I gotta think with the popularity of the league and with Colorado as a state, right? If Bo Nix hits and you have Jokic, you have McKinnon, and I'm not saying Bo Nix is going to be on the level of Jokic and McKinnon. But I'm just saying if the Broncos are relevant, if they're competitive with Bo Nix, and then you have the Nuggets and the Avs still in their championship window, plus Deion Sanders up in Boulder. This is a sports crazed state. I would wonder a little bit about it's certainly the time, but I just wonder because all of this, what I said about Avs, Nuggets, Broncos, all that kind of stuff, I mean, that's all true, but summer's just a different animal. Right? Coors Field, hiking, biking, concerts. I don't blame the WNBA for choosing other markets over Denver. If they wanted to keep expanding, I think of the list that remains, I think Denver would be a good choice. Kind of feel like maybe the WNBA should like pause for a minute with all the expansion they're doing. So we're probably looking far into the future. We'll see where this league goes. But I just wonder about Colorado because it's just a different deal in the summer. And whether attendance would be good. You probably wouldn't do it at Ball Arena. You wouldn't do it. Do it at a smaller venue. I think the WNBA has chosen their latest expansion cities correctly in choosing them over Denver. But if they keep expanding with the investment that women's sports is getting and the popularity and everything, yeah, Denver could make a lot of sense. We'll see. 719-247-1313. One last break. We'll talk a little bit about this NFL Sunday that's coming up, some of the more intriguing contests. And if you're fully locked in on the Broncos, you may miss some of them. Not much of a 2 o'clock window this Sunday, but we'll talk about the 11 a.m. window because it's spicy. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Of course, I'm talking about fall. Football, pumpkin spice. It's really the best. And we want to enhance your fall even more with the $1,000 fall fund. We'll pick 5 winners to each take home $1,000. Head to extrasports1300.com to enter for your chance to win the $1,000 fall fund, sponsored locally by Hope Online Learning Academy. So I have the Vautech Miami game on here in the studio, but it's on mute. And I look over and I see Cam Ward getting absolutely sandwiched, and it looked bad, and they're showing it over and over again. I'm like, oh no, Cam Ward got hurt. Nope. They're just deciding whether it was a fumble or an incomplete pass. It was an incomplete pass. Cam Ward's okay. Virginia Tech now has the ball, no score, early in quarter number 1. There won't be a player in college football, or more accurately, a player in the NFL draft, that will do more for his draft stock this season than Cam Ward. Was he even on anyone's radar for anything? I mean, really, Heisman? Top quarterback taken in the draft? Those two things are definitely on the table for Cam Ward right now. Be devastating to Miami to lose him. But I think there are going to be teams, if we're talking about Cam Ward, Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders. I could see Cam Ward being the top quarterback taken. Carson Beck's taken a little bit of a hit because he has the unmitigated gall to allow Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers to go to the NFL. I mean, essentially, that's what's going on. Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers are in the NFL and doing quite well, I might add. And people are looking at Carson Beck like, meh. Now, I was never as high on Carson Beck. So I guess in some ways I'm like, okay, that now it's going to regress a little bit to the mean. But I felt that way about Carson Beck when he had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. And now people are like holding it against him that the Georgia offense is not as good as they were last year. But Cam Ward could be the top quarterback taken in April. This is an interesting game for Miami. Vautech might give them some problems. Too early to tell, though. Well, they have been doing a good job of getting to Cam Ward. Of course, the outside of our local interests, the biggest game of the weekend in college football is Alabama and Georgia. Speaking of Carson Beck, I'm like fixated on Alabama. And I have been all week. I know this is different. I know this is not Saban versus Smart. I don't know. Kalen DeBoer has been able to figure some things out against people that run Georgia's defense in the Pac-12, if you recall. This could be a game that vaults Jaden Milroe to the top of the Heisman standings or leaderboard or ladder, whatever, power rankings. And I think he's already in that conversation, but you have Carson Beck on the other side. Everybody is focused on this game. If Jaden Milroe balls out and plays the way, quite frankly, that he has, I think there's going to be a lot of Jaden Milroe conversation come Monday. And that's why I keep saying, like, CU does. I push back against anyone that says, well, it doesn't matter how CU does. Travis Hunter should still be the Heisman winner. Like, I'm not going to argue that point, but I'm going to tell you CU has to win. Like, you could push back against the notion all you want, like it shouldn't matter, but it does. It does. And watch for the winner of the Alabama-Georgia game, whether it's Carson Beck or Jalen Milroe, to be talked about as the hot Heisman candidate come Monday. Even if Travis Hunter plays extremely well and does what he always does against UCF. People will care if CU wins, whether they vote for Travis Hunter. And we are so biased towards quarterbacks. We frame everything through quarterbacking. It's not going to be easy for Travis Hunter to win the Heisman. Now, getting invited to New York, I think as long as he keeps going down the same, he'll be there. But CU's got, and I don't know what that looks like. Is it bowl eligibility? Do they have to win 8 games? I don't know. I'll tell you when we get there. Right now, CU is winning enough. I'll say that. They're winning enough for Travis Hunter to be not only in the Heisman conversation, but many people's front runner. But I'm telling you, if Alabama wins and Jaden Milroe plays really well, almost independent of whatever Travis Hunter does in Orlando tomorrow, people will move Milroe up. It's quarterbacking, but it's going to be, if CU kind of fades, that's going to hurt Travis Hunter's case, even if Heisman is not supposed to matter. Jaden Daniels had the good fortune of being a quarterback. Like, if you were a running back and still being incredibly productive and still being the sole reason that LSU wins football games, he wouldn't even be a thought for the Heisman. With LSU's record the way it was last year, you could say it shouldn't matter, but it does. Unless you're a quarterback. But I'm excited for that game. And then obviously CU, UCF, very interesting. CU can't stop the run, and I don't think UCF can stop Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Might be one of those whoever has the ball last wins. I'm really surprised that the line is the way it is, that UCF is such a heavy favorite. But I said this earlier in the week. I'll repeat it now. 5 times CU has been double-digit underdogs. The only time they didn't cover was Oregon. Since Shedeur got there. And I say since Shedeur got there because he's been the reason why they've covered in those games. We'll just see if they can pull out a huge win over UCF. Big noon kickoff is going to be there. And then to the NFL, I'm very disappointed that the NFL did not look out for you and I if you are paying the most attention to the Broncos on Sunday, because all the other good games are in the 11 a.m. window. Of course, until you get to Buffalo and Baltimore Sunday night, which is going to be a really good one. But does Jordan Love come back? Minnesota, I got to say, showed some things against Houston. I think Minnesota has some staying power. But this is the big one when they play Green Bay. If they're going to win this division, they got to go through the Packers. See if Jordan Love plays. Are we going to see things click a little bit for Caleb Williams? The Rams are decimated by injuries. Decimated. Yet still found a way to win. Credit to them. Can't keep doing it every week. If the Bears are going to ask Caleb Williams to throw the ball 50 times against that secondary, it could be Caleb Williams' best game in the NFL to this point. And then Philly, Tampa, really interesting. All in the 11 a.m. window. How dare they? New England, San Francisco, pass. Arizona, Washington, if not for Jaden Daniels, pass. Cleveland, Vegas, yuck. And then Kansas City, LA, except the Chargers are going to be without their entire team. Justin Herbert's a question mark. Bosa, Derwin James. Better question is, who is playing for the Chargers on Sunday? I heard Rich Eisen talk about this before I went on air. Yeah, and I agree with him. If Jim Harbaugh wins this game, oh my goodness. People are going to be loving on the Chargers. And why shouldn't they? That'd be a massive win to knock off unbeaten Kansas City with missing like every player that anyone can name on the Chargers. I don't think they will. I think it'll be close because it's always close when the Chargers play the Chiefs. 19-16 feels about right. I care more about that game than you do. I know that. I said the 2 o'clock window is not very good. But then a great Sunday night game, Buffalo-Baltimore. Baltimore still needs to win games. Right? Mission is not accomplished just because you beat Dallas. I think anyone that watched that football game last night can attest to that. Cowboys are not elite. They are not in the conversation for anything significant this year. So beating Dallas is not, it was necessary for Baltimore. It's not this signature win. In fact, I think a lot of people, because of how Dallas was able to come back on Baltimore, weren't that impressed with what Baltimore did. But now they're going to be taking on the Buffalo Bills, which everybody, including myself, I'll raise my hand, had to recalibrate quickly on what we thought of the Buffalo Bills. So still some desperation from Baltimore and should make for an entertaining affair on Sunday. Looking forward to it. Would like to let you know that if you are choosing to bet on any of this weekend's games, might I suggest the Circa Sports Colorado app. I very much enjoyed my experience, have enjoyed my experience betting on Circa Sports Colorado app. They try to make it better for the better. And the way they do that, they don't give you a bunch of promos. Their lines are their promos. They strive to be a minus 110 split, unlike other books that go 115, 120. Just get more money out of you. That's what they're doing with the minus 115, minus 120 splits. You know that. And they keep as little money as possible on large market bets like futures and golf tournaments compared to other books. They do not limit players based on their winnings. And if you ever should run into any kind of issue with the app, just know real people, the same people behind the Circa Sports brand, will resolve your issues in a timely fashion. Better for the better. That's what I'm telling you. Download the Circa Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. It's been my pleasure to serve you on this Friday afternoon. Enjoy your weekend, whatever you may be up to. Talk to you perhaps tomorrow night for Switchback Soccer. Love to have you join me. If not, talk to you on Monday.